Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your patience and thank you for joining us this morning for this morning's webinar on Is Your Payroll Future Ready? The Evolution of SAP SuccessFactors Employee Central Payroll. My name is John Clifford and I've been responsible, I suppose, for organising and facilitating this morning's session. Just want to get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way before we get started. Just to let everyone know that we will record this morning's session. If you would like a copy of it, please feel free to reach out to us, and we will follow up with everyone who has registered and attended this morning also. Typically, we try to make these sessions as interactive as possible. You'll notice on the top of your screen there is chat functionality. So if you do have any questions as we go through this morning's session, please feel free to submit them, and one of our subject matter experts will answer them at the end. As I said, we will have a Q&A session just before we finish up this morning. I'm just going to get straight into this morning's session. Delighted to be joined by some of our payroll subject matter experts. This morning's event is truly a global event in the sense we've got Alex Healy, one of our subject matter payroll experts. Alex is based in the UK, and we also have David, who sits in Germany. David's head of people, and we have Mr. Søren Koppelhaus, our founder, but also a payroll solution advisor, and also Anna Mette, based in Copenhagen. And again, Anna is one of our subject matter experts, and Anna has a particular interest, I suppose, in everything around Danish payroll and time and so forth. On that note, I'm just going to go quickly into the agenda, just to give people a quick overview of what we plan on covering this morning. Going to get David to talk a little bit about, I suppose, Gavdi Group as an organization and what we do and where we do it, and so forth. Alex is going to pick it up, and he's going to David will then continue to talk a little bit about, I suppose, Employee Central Payroll and what it is, and we'll also delve into the architecture of that as well a little bit. And then handing it over to Alex, who'll talk, I suppose, what benefits and features of ECP and so forth. But I suppose more importantly, and I think that what we're all interested in seeing this morning really is the product demonstration. And we will finalize that with a session at the end, in the sense that we're happy to take questions, and we'll get around to answering as many of those as we can. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to you, David. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Welcome also from my side. I have the pleasure today to introduce Gavdi Group to our audience here. As it says here, we are a leading provider of HR and cloud transformation. So it means basically that we've been focusing on HR and solutions around HR for the last 25 years, founded in Denmark, but expanded across Europe mostly, which also means that we have employees and offices in most of the European countries, where we also have our clients and customers and service them in matters of HR. And particularly, of course, for today's topic in payroll, starting off 25 years ago, of course, there wasn't Employee Central Payroll, and we will show a bit the peculiarities of that. But SAP Payroll has been at the heart of what we do all these years. Although we are a boutique of around, it says here, 175 people, we, of course, take pride in being able to service this on a local and a global level. And we look for expanding our reach, of course, with more people in all these countries. And we've also done a lot of global implementations in other areas of HR, like Employee Central, for example, for core HR purposes. And if we look at the further right, of course, in the Nordics, we've been the largest based on history. And we also pride ourselves to be the #1 partner for SAP in this region. And I believe we can lead over to today's topic, which is Employee Central Payroll. And we can go already to the next overview slide, where I alluded already. We started off, of course, with SAP on-premise payroll when it was there, and then moving over to Employee Central Payroll is strategically the next logical step, because that mirrors also the evolution of payroll within the SAP environment. Employee Central Payroll is a cloud solution, as is probably known to most people. It supports many of the countries natively, and there are some partner solutions around for those countries that are not natively supported by SAP. This is also true for Denmark, where we provide a solution, and we'll go into this, of course, from a local perspective to cover all the local legal needs that payroll has. The big benefit that we see in using Employee Central Payroll is the standardization across all these countries, and that makes SAP's payroll solution quite unique on the overall payroll market globally, as it allows to have processes aligned on a global scale and still consider all the local specifics that we have. For those that come from a on-premise, from a legacy SAP payroll solution, the overall best benefit is probably that the support that has happened in the past continues to work in a similar way. So all the possibilities to extend the configuration to cover specifics of any organization around are still applicable to the Employee Central Payroll landscape. So from that perspective, not a lot changes. What does change and what is added to this vast functionality is, of course, the usability, the user-friendliness, the overall, let's say, way of how data is handled and entered in a modern cloud environment, also using the rest of the SAP SuccessFactors suite as a basis. And I believe from that, I have already alluded to the architecture that we have within Employee Central Payroll. The Employee Central solution of SAP SuccessFactors offers a more modern and structured way to handle employee data that is needed for payroll and for performing specific activities on the employee lifecycle. Also including possibilities to manage employees' time with the rather new time tracking solution that has been developed over the last, let's say years, 5 years maybe, and is now on a level that allows for a flexible way of handling employee data, wholesome from this Employee Central platform. We basically have a natively enabled integration to the Employee Central Payroll platform. So it's part of an overall bundle of functionality, which of course is better than a interface that is individually built, as it allows, again, to a standard way of integration. So you don't have to look after, an interface that is sometimes tedious to maintain, as probably most people know. Employee Central Payroll, as such, covers the functionalities that SAP Payroll has been covering the last 30 so years. So it allows, again, for a very robust platform, for a very auditable way of managing your payroll process, and at the same time, of course, covers all the benefits of a new solution. The last item that is very important to most clients is integrations to standard legal reporting needs for taxes, for example, for social insurance coverage. We have here outlined specificities of Denmark, where specific Danish integrations are outlined. This is, of course, also applicable to all the other countries where SAP Payroll is supported. If we take Germany as an example, where tax reporting is also a standard integration that is provided. Also in the UK, we have standard ways of integrating the data, and all the other countries as well. So basically, if you know how SAP supports these processes, this is also, of course, part of the EC Payroll platform. And I think with that very quick overview, without going too deep, and knowing that local legal requirements basically vary by country, Of course, I'll hand over to Alex, who will show now a more specific benefit view of how we can move to EC payroll as one of the leading ways to cover payroll in the future.
Yeah, thank you, David. That's fantastic. Yeah, so obviously I'm here to show you the system. So we'll go through these few slides and then we'll take a look at ECP and how it looks and feels differently to traditional on-premise SAP. But I just wanted to go through a few kind of noticeable benefits of upgrading. So for those of you that are currently using SAP on-prem, why make the move to ECP? The first benefit is your responsibilities change. So with on-premise SAP payroll, yes, you're responsible for all the processing, the local configuration, your integrations, but you've also got to think about hardware, so all the servers that you put the payroll system on. You've got to apply upgrades and HRSPs. Backup and disaster recovery is a key consideration, as well as system monitoring and security. If we go to the next slide, you'll see that for the customer, there's responsibility is then split. So as a customer, you're still responsible for your payroll processing, obviously, your local configuration, so your new wage types, your work patterns, any changes to your payroll environment, and also any integrations that are kind of, standard ones, so P2P, your integration between EC and ECP. But then that splits into where SAP then take responsibility for your hosting and your upgrades and your backup and disaster recovery and your system access and provisioning. So that's less involvement for a basis team, and it's a clear segregation of moving payroll out of your kind of more integrated ERP environment, ring fencing it, keeping it separate, and giving you more freedom just to focus on the core payroll processing and configuration. So obviously a massive benefit to larger companies that we can see. I just want to focus quickly as well on that upgrade and HRSP. I'm assuming they're called HRSPs all over the world. So this is where every year or every quarter, SAP deliver changes in functionality, often legal changes for your country. So if the tax is changing in Denmark, they'll give you new tax thresholds. If we're getting new maternity rates in the UK, those come from SAP directly. And we have to carefully plan our HRSP, so we have to kind of put resource in place. We have to work out when we're going to put it in the first environment, test it, move it through. There typically might be a change freeze where you have to stop other transports moving through the environment while you're working on these HRSPs. And then there's a regression testing to make sure your HRSPs have not affected anything else in your ERP environment, so finance or projects, for example. Obviously, with the cloud ECP solution, there's no need for basis to get involved and to plan that downtime. The upgrade is scheduled with SAP, much in the same way that SuccessFactors and Employee Central is upgraded, and it's all done on your behalf. There's no other impact on your ERP system. It's because it's a standalone payroll system. It's only affecting the payroll legislation, and that means you can more target your testing just to payroll without having to worry about that other impacts on other areas of your business. So it should streamline the upgrade process every year, and you'll have a better experience and not hassle the basis team, which is always good. Thanks. Reduce configuration. So while yes, you're still going to need to configure new wage types or changes to your payroll, the time off functionality in SuccessFactors can be leveraged to maybe cut down on some of the repetitive configuration, especially around work schedules. So I'll show you in the demo how we can maybe cut down on some work schedule configuration using the time off functionality. For those of you who've worked in big organizations with lots of flexible working or maybe even shift patterns, especially in the industrial industries. Often you can get bogged down in configuring work patterns and shift patterns and all the different variations. Time off allows us to kind of keep core configuration in place and then flex around the work pattern without affecting payroll, which is a real benefit of ECP, especially for those of you that know the pain of that work patterns can cause. So yeah, I look forward to showing you that shortly. And obviously the future support and investment. So ECP is the next generation, you know, it's here, this is it, this is the future, and it's the latest technology, it's cloud-based, it's where SAP's put in all their effort. It's where they're investing, and where they're developing, and you know, so a move to SAP is ensuring your future sustainability, essentially. And there's lots of talk around AI at the moment, and you know, SAP's plan is to integrate AI with payroll. You know, we're yet to see what that exactly means, but we can assume it means automation of repetitive tasks, you know, stuff that frees up the payroll team, the HR team, to actually focus on more of the core processes and tasks, and not worry about the day-to-day repetitive stuff. Obviously, if you stay on-prem or move to S4, you've only got guaranteed support until the end of 2027 at the moment. Obviously, there's the option to extend, but at a cost, and there's no plans to integrate AI for payroll. So, you know, ECP really is the future and where we should be looking as the next step for payroll. And with that, I will start to show you the system if everyone's ready. And we're going to start with EC, Employee Central. So the new cloud payroll concept is based around Employee Central, and moving the traditional SAP payroll engine into a cloud-hosted system that's far more intuitive and user-friendly. SAP have introduced the payroll control center that sits over the payroll system and allows much more flexibility in processing and error resolution and reporting. This new systemized PCC process allows you to ditch the old paper schedules, and you don't need to remember transactions anymore. You can just follow the PCC processes when you're running the payroll each month. It's much more intuitive, much more user-friendly, as I say. It's still the same SAP payroll engine though. So, you know, that SAP payroll engine's been around for nearly 30 years, maybe more than 30 years. It's proven, it's robust. The payroll schema is accurate and allows, you know, very detailed processing. That's still present and correct. It's just really how you access that system that's changed. So we'll start with a single employee. So I'll bring up my test employee in Employee Central. And we're just going to go through each portlet, each module, and look at some of the data that's shared with the payroll system, and also take a quick look at some enhancements within the time management module that can really help with payroll system configuration and processing. So, of course, personal data, we need it in payroll. We need to know the employee's title, their name, their date of birth. We have a shared SFID that's mirrored in the payroll system, so that you can easily access records from both sides. Obviously, we need address information, some national insurance, so social insurance numbers, for example, and of course, bank transfer. Now, when I say this data moves to payroll, what I mean is that the ECP system creates a mirror image record of this EC record for the payroll side. Those of you familiar with traditional SAP, the PA module, infotypes, fields, for example, it's actually exactly the same. This data flows into infotypes and fields and builds up that PA record. and that's what we process in ECP. So personal data, one of the first things to go across. Now, obviously, employees can update this themselves. As soon as you activate ECP, this data needs to be very accurate. There's no, if you don't know the date of birth, you can't just put in, August 1st, 1900, for example. It has to be right. You have to get the date of birth right, because that could drive NI calculations, for example. Same with the address, same with bank details. They have to be perfect. Moving to the job data. This is where employees sit within the business. So the org structure, as it were, in the old on-prem days. And if we look at this job information field, what this does, it just shows us a bit of information about how this employee sits within the business. So the company code, obviously very important. This employee is in the GB company code. The business unit, the division, the cost center, very important for financial posting. Every payroll employee must have a cost center. Now, in ECP, we still have the traditional personnel area and personnel sub-area structure, and that drives things like assigning different payment wage types to employees, or the work schedules that are available to them, or even the holiday calendar that they can book time against. So there may be a need to reintroduce some extra fields in your organizational information portlet. If you've got EC but not ECP, Gavdi can work with you to re-engineer that extra data to make sure that this information can replicate freely. Another key part in this job information section is obviously the work pattern. I'm going to touch a bit more on work patterns and how they've changed in the time module, but actually this kind of seemingly innocuous field here, standard 40 hours, drives a lot in payroll. It can be responsible for calculating your hourly rate on payments. So your monthly salary divided by your monthly hours can generate an hourly rate. It's also responsible for looking at statutory payments for maternity, paternity, as well as any absence or holiday, and of course timesheets. So really important field, and there's been some great developments in that area recently. Moving backwards, we'll go to compensation. Obviously, quite self-explanatory. This is where we hold the information that we pay to our employees on a regular basis. A key field here in this compensation model is the pay group. You'll see when we go to the payroll control center why this is so important. This actually groups our employees together for payment. So you could have a monthly pay group, a weekly pay group, or ones that represent different pay days in your business. It's entirely up to you, and you can have as many as you like. A bit further down, we have the allowances that are paid. Obviously, this compensation model links to performance, so things like bonuses and annual increases and performance goals and increases in pay. These can all be factored in and feed through to payroll without any extra integration. But at the moment, we just see two allowances, car allowance and basic salary, that are going to feed through to our payroll module and be paid every time we run payroll. Again, you can add as many or as few allowances here that you like. There is another area to add things such as deductions and one-off payments, and I'll show you that shortly. But really, we want to try and introduce as much information as we can in the compensation module. Gives you much more flexibility in terms of reporting, because you're just reporting from EC and not trying to bring some information in from EC, some from ECP, and there's a slight difference. This gives you a much more holistic overview of what people are actually getting paid. So I'll just go back to the profile and we'll jump to time management quickly before we go on to the payroll. So time management, traditionally time management was done in the on-prem systems. A common setup is to have on-prem for your data and employee self-service or manager self-service as a kind of window for the employee, a web-based view on desktop or mobile for them to be able to access this information, make requests for leave, fill out timesheets, that kind of thing. That has been moved into EC And actually, there's some really great developments. So I'm just going to show you a few. So if I go to administer time, so you can see that we've got the ability to request leave. So if I want to request some holiday, it tells me my balance, how much I've got to claim, and some other absence types as well that I can choose to book if I like. So there's quite a comprehensive list, obviously, special leave, shared parental, maternity, paternity, but I'm just going to stick with vacation, and I'm going to say I want to take some time off next week. And I can request that, submit it, and it all goes through nice and easy. Exactly the same way. I'm a very similar view to ESS, really, but obviously this is all occurring in EC, not in the on-prem system. Another great feature of this is the work pattern. Now, some businesses with complicated working structures, flexible time, or potentially the industrial sector where you have lots of shift workers, it can be really time consuming and quite a financial burden to configure all of the work patterns in the system. What EC time off allows you to do is have that core pattern in place. So that standard 40 hours that we looked at earlier on the front screen, that's still in place, but we can create temporary changes to the data. So I can say, for next week, for 2 days, I'd like to drop from 8 hours to 7 hours. You can see that in place there. Assign that. The employee can assign this, or HR can do it. And if we jump to that week that I just requested, we can see the 2 days off. 2 days change from 8 to 7. The core work pattern's not changed, and what's important is that nothing has changed in the payroll system. The payroll record has not been split, so there'll be no prorating, which is a common issue with when you change work patterns multiple times in a period. Everything stays the same. The rates are fixed, the hours are fixed in payroll, but things like timesheets, annual leave are augmented to reflect what the employee is actually working. So a really powerful fix that, that would have taken a few days of configuration testing and transportation. It took me 2 minutes or even 1 minute just to request some extra days and create that temporary change. If I go back to my people profile and the time management and my timesheet, we should be able to see those times reflected immediately in the timesheet as well. So again, no need to change that work pattern at source. So that's the week, and then the following week they have, so here we have the Monday and the Tuesday, 7 hours, and then reverting to 8, without any change to the actual physical work pattern. No need to replicate to payroll. So I'll go back to the people profile. Now, that's all standard EC that I've shown you, albeit the time off is an optional kind of enhancement. When we introduce ECP, your payroll system, we need to give you the payroll portlet. And what this does is open up some new fields for processing. So if I click on the payroll link, you can see that we have a list of different payroll info types. So those of you familiar with on-prem payroll, you'd know that tax GB is info type 65, national insurance 69, pension 70, and so on and so forth. What the payroll portlet does is create links to your ECP system and allows you to add this payroll information from EC, from SuccessFactors. So what that's done is now that's opened up an ECP window in the background, and we can put in some tax codes and set some information. Obviously, this is the GB tax screen. But as you can see, it's more of a traditional SAP view. And if we go to create a new record, you can do, the usual things. Add the start date, the source, normally a P6 or something, cumulative or week 1, and we can add the tax code. So traditionally that was done in the payroll system. Now we're doing it in ECP. Just going to back out of that. And if I go, just to show you another one, GBSMP. So when we put people on paternity, maternity, shared parental leave, we need to put in some extra dates because of their MAP-B1. So an official form from the doctor that says when the baby's due, and you can choose to put on those adoptional pay, maternity pay, paternity. So you're kind of interacting directly with payroll, but through EC, and starting to flesh out that data a little bit more. With all the data in place, so your EC HR data, your time data, your comp data, and your payroll, you've kind of got enough data to start running the payroll. As I said, the data from EC flows into ECP via replication. There's no need for middleware with ECP. So the SAP standard integration, point-to-point integration is included, and it's so much more robust and user-friendly than traditional middleware such as Dell Boomi. In fact, it's too good. Everything will just replicate, and sometimes we need to filter out things to stop payroll data being overwritten. We monitor what's happening in the replication via the data replication monitor, so the DRM. You can just type that in here. Up, and I'll just quickly show you how we monitor what status the data is in between the two systems. So just put all status, all until now. We can add filters. So I can say I only want to see my GP pay group. I'm not interested in any of the others. And we'll go. And this will show us everything that's ever replicated. Now, you can see there's some successful. So when an employee successfully replicates to payroll, we'll get a success message and the time they last replicated. This could be the first time they replicated or subsequent replications to include changes that have been made by HR. If they fail, it will tell us why it's failed and when it's failed and when it needs to run again. Obviously, the system will keep trying to replicate while there are failures and then just fail every time until it's fixed. So we can see the messages for these employees are all to do with bank details. They're missing bank details. Now, bank details are a key part of payroll, hence why it's telling us early that we're trying to pay some people, but actually we've not got all the information in EC. So the employee would then have to add their bank details before this would replicate, and then it would clear. We see this data replication monitor as a shared responsibility between HR and payroll. Before now, those two teams were very operated in silo almost. You have a separate payroll, separate HR system. But ECP really does bring everything together. And actually, HR team members will need to think more like payroll members. They'll need to be 100% accurate with data. They'll need to be timely with their data, because you can't just put something in as a holding value, because that will replicate through to payroll instantly. So you need to be incredibly sure about what you're entering. So HR will monitor this to make sure that there's no missing data and they can reach out to employees if they need to. Likewise, payroll want to keep an eye on this data so that they know that all the data they're expecting to process this month is present and correct. So they don't want to process half records or any missing records. These errors could be new starters that are, hoping to get paid this month. And if it doesn't get fixed and come through, they might miss the payroll cutoff. So once we've cleared all our replication errors, we're then ready to process payroll. So we come out of EC and we go to the payroll module. Now, ECP and the PCCs, this is the Payroll Control Center, PCC, looks very different to old-fashioned on-premise payroll. It's one of the major changes and improvements. So gone are the days of having to log into on-prem, remember your transaction codes, go to different screens, print, use variants, download files. That all goes away. And actually what the PCC does is guide you through a configured process that includes all the transactions you need to successfully execute your payroll. So I'm going to show you through a little bit of the setup before we go into the processes. Where at Gavdi, when we implement a payroll system, the first thing we do is we work with you via a series of workshops to understand your processes, understand what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what you need to achieve from a payroll. And we'll do that over several iterations, come up with a technical document, and then we'll start to work out what your process is and build it into the payroll control center for you. That process of what flows when and what transactions are used is locked in at the design phase. There are some elements you can tweak though, and I can show you those. So we're going to start off with policies. So policies are what we now call reports. So these are the kind, and also errors and exceptions, how they used to be known in the olden days. So when we run our payroll, what do we care about? What do we want to be alerted? What do we want to know about? What kind of reports do we want? And this goes in the policy section. So for GB, for example, we've got 4 groups of policies. We've got default, gross, missing data, and net. If I open the gross policies, you'll see that the policies that are run every time we process payroll are employees with gross pay exceeding 3,500, or employees with deductions greater than gross earnings, employees with overtime over a certain amount. These are configurable, so you can add as many policies as you need. These are just ones we recommend, and you can also tweak the threshold. So for example, gross pay exceeding 3,500, everyone in your business might earn more than 3,500. It's not really a useful piece of information. You'd need to set that threshold a lot higher, so you're only capturing the exceptions. If I go back as well for the missing data, this one shows employees with missing cost centers. So really important for that posting to finance. We can't post to finance if there's any missing cost centers. So early on in the process, we want to know about anyone that's missing one. Likewise, anyone that's missing an address or a bank details. And that could be, obviously, that's kind of where the crossover with the data replication monitor comes in, but there could be people who've had bank details and they've been taken away. So, as I say, policies, they're your things that we're concerned about that we're going to start to generate alerts on. The next thing I want to show you quickly is teams. So we can set up teams and users within the payroll control center, and then you can adjust them and manage them yourselves to when you have new hires, leavers, people move around the team. So I'm just going to show you the UK pre-payroll monitoring team. If I drill down even further, so it tells us information. So it tells us this team processes monthly GB. So if you remember when we saw the compensation module in EC, I said that monthly GB pay group field was really important because that means anyone who's got that value is going to be processed by this team. We can set team leads. So I'm the team lead and Michelle's a team lead. That means we have extra responsibility, more of a manager role. We can do more processing. We can change things. We can change policies. We can move the teams around. And then we've got some team members, which again includes myself and Michelle, but also Deepika and Mohan. So you can, as and when you get new team members, you can add and take away and build up that team and build up several teams as well. So you could have an error resolution team, a processing team, anything you want really. Moves me on to processes. So processes, as I said, are where we group a series of transactions in order that need to be processed so you can run them without needing to go into the traditional SAP system and remember those codes and find the variants. So if we look at the GB pre-payroll, what this does is that shows again which payroll it's for. You could be using this for many different payroll areas. It shows the policies that we want to bring into this payroll process. So all of the ones I showed you, so the net, the missing data, the gross, the default, they're all going to be included when we run this, execute this process. Who's doing it? Well, it's myself, Michelle, and Mohan, but that's configurable. we've got some analytics. So when you run this process, what the PCC can do is give you real-time analytics in the front end that says, oh, this month you've got 50 errors. Last month you had 10 errors. Has something gone wrong? Or, oh, this month your payroll cost is 2 million. Last month it was 1 million. That kind of analysis and data that really tells you, gives you a flavor of how the process is, how the payroll is performing this month. And finally, the new recurrences. So we can see that these are the periods that have actually been processed so far or have been lined up to process. So May, June, July 2025. But we can actually quite easily add more in as we want. So we can say, actually, I'm going to add August, September, October into this. They're not going to be processed now, but they're ready to be processed when you are. So just quickly validate that and save. And you'll see that when I go to my processes, they're all in place and ready to process. So again, you can't configure what transactions you need here. That's done at the design stage. But you can work out what you're reporting on, what payroll it's for, who does it, and what you want to report on. So I'm just going to go to my processes, and this is where we actually execute. So in the interest of time, I'm halfway through the pre-payroll for May, because it does take 5 or 10 minutes to process the payroll and run all the monitoring. And we want this demo to be as smooth and succinct as possible. Quickly go into upcoming, you'll see that there's production payroll and post payroll ready to go once I've completed the pre, and also there's the pre-payrolls that I've just added as well. So in my processes, I know that this is my work for the next few months. We're going to go to active processes and click down. So the first transaction of the pre-payroll process was to create the test payroll data. So essentially what I did was when I executed this, I ran the start payroll transaction in ECP. So those of you familiar with on-prem SAP payroll, that is essentially the PC00M underscore calc transaction, the actual transaction that we run payroll. And you can actually see that if you drill down, you can see the program details. And here we have something that looks like a traditional SAP screen. You can see that we've processed the schema, ZG00, for the period, and some of the analytics. So how many people were included, who was successful, how many periods, and how many were rejected. The next stage was to initiate policies. So I ran the simulation payroll. I then ran all of those policies, the 4 groups with all the different ones inside, potentially around 40 policies, to look for any anomalies or things that I need to look at. And what that does is that creates monitoring alerts. There's 7 at the moment. So if I go to alert assignment, I can see there's 7 alerts not assigned. 1 in GB default, 2 in net, 1 in gross, 1 in missing data. So I can say, right, gross policies, I'm going to assign that to Michelle. She's good at looking at those. Default policies, I'm going to give those to Mohan. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to do the net policies. I'm going to look at those and give those to myself. So we've just dished out that work, those things that we need to check that the PCC has alerted us about to different team members. And as soon as they log in to the PCC, they're going to get alerts that tells them they've got something to look at. So if I go to my alerts, there's my pre-payroll GB with employees over £2,500. I'm just going to click in. It should tell me who they are. Yep, so Mr. Test, Mr. Joe Blogs. So what I would then do is take a look at the record, work out, is this person entitled to £2,500 or greater? Have they got overtime? Have they had a pay increase? And if they have, I can say, yep, resolved. The reason is overtime, and click it. Done. That one's gone out of my queue. This one, for example, I might not know why Joe Blogs has got a high pay this month, so I could forward it on. I could say, actually, I'm going to forward that to Michelle, and she can look at it because she knows she's got more information to hand, or she's more experienced than myself, which is true, by the way. So when we go back to my processes, we should see that, yes, we have 6 alerts now. 3 not assigned, 2 with Michelle, 1 with Mohan, and 1's gone because I've successfully resolved that. And you want to run this pre-payroll process over and over again in the month for as long as you like, you know, re-simulating, regenerating errors as your data evolves, as you get more new starters, more changes, and just work through those alerts to a point where they're nice and clear. Then you'd obviously move to the pre-process. And this one you can see, I'm not going to execute it now because it would take 5 or 10 minutes, but essentially here's the transactions. So start payroll, that calc payroll. So probably the first step is actually to lock the payroll. So go to the control record, run payroll, then run a posting simulation so we can start to look at how the data is going to interact with finance and make sure there's no errors. Initiate our policies again, run some monitoring, and end the payroll. And then we'd move on to the post payroll. So once we're happy with everything in the production payroll, we're going to create our posting documents, release posting, transfer posting, and then we're going to create our backs file. Once this backs file is created, the PCC automatically puts the system into exit, and instantly payslips are generated for your employees. So no longer do you have to separately upload payslips to SuccessFactors, or God forbid, print them out and send them to their home addresses. This is all part of the system, all because it's an integrated system and an integrated process. We'll see payslips available for employees, and I can quickly show you that now. So this, once we've finished this, this is kind of the monthly payroll done. There's of course a few more steps we need to do after every payroll run, such as payovers to pension providers and submitting our tax detail to our local government, HMRC, for example, in the UK. And I'll show you how to do that. Now we can actually put those transactions in the PCC. More and more transactions become available every time. But for this demo, I've got them set with my home screen. So I'm just going to jump back to my employee. I'm just going to show you that in his payroll module is his pay statement option. And he'll be able to view all of his pay statements that have ever been processed for him, and along with his P60s, and of course, download and print these pay slips as well. So it should cut down on people querying the payroll department, asking for six months of pay slips for their mortgage application. This allows them to do it themselves through the app or through a desktop in EC. And as I say, finally, we also give you some payroll transactions on the home screen as tiles. So while these can be in the PCC, you can also have them here. So if you want to report your tax to your local government, so in this case the Danish Inland Revenue Service, you just click that and it opens up the income transaction. So in the UK this would be the FPS, that's sent via RTI, and it's all there ready for you to use your variants. Likewise, we can also generate some reports for payovers, extra reports for pension providers, for example. So you have Wage Stat Reporter, and here you're interacting directly with ECP, but through the Employee Central homepage, our pension breakdown report. You can execute that and export to Excel to send over to the pension providers. So that is a very brief overview of EC, replication, and ECP. I hope you find it useful.
We do have a few questions. Actually, there's a question here for you, Søren, and I'm going to cover as many as we can over the next couple of minutes. And again, Thank you for everyone's patience. Søren, this is a good question, actually. Can we move our on-prem SAP configuration to ECP? Or do we have to start all over again and rebuild in ECP? And that's a question from Stina.
Well, that's definitely a good question. And I think there's different, you can say, feelings around that. We have an approach where you do need to reassess your configuration. The reason is that doing payroll, you need, of course, a core HR data. You need access often to time, absence management, and then you need your payroll. So if you go from an on-prem setup where you have that in your ECC and you want to move that towards an EC payroll scenario, then you, of course, need to look into how do I get my good old PA data, personal administration, into EC. You need to look at how you manage time and into the Employee Central. And finally, you, of course, have your actual payroll configuration. And your actual payroll configuration, you can, of course, move that fairly one-to-one into EC payroll. However, we always would advise a customer to look into that. You might have 20 years of configuration sitting in your current system, and it might be the time to clean up just a bit, like moving from one flat to another. After 20 years, you might not want to bring everything with you. The same one once you go from on-prem to a pure cloud setup. So we would like to have you can say, the dialogue and advice best possible. And it's not that a big change doing it the right way.
Thank you, Søren. Søren, I'll ask you this question as well while you're on song. And this is a question. Thank you, Daniel. How does ECP speed up your payroll processes?
Well, if the internet works, it speeds up that you, in fact, as I was also told about, that you can do all the pre-processing. So you, instead of closing the system down and run payroll, where you start off validating data, that you do, you can say constantly, not sitting, of course, monitoring, but you can, in fact, validate data, the quality of data, and get your organization, including getting your data cleaned up, getting data into quality. So instead of this just being, you can say, a task for the payroll department, it becomes an activity for the organization. The employee should own, for example, the bank data, the address data, etc. It's not for payroll administration to do that. They need to validate the data. That we can do constantly with the use of the payroll control center. And then when we have done that, we just need to release the payroll for run. The time becomes then much shorter because your data has the needed quality at that point in time. So I think that is definitely one of the benefits. So it's just not the payroll control center. It is starting to utilize that you are in a cloud solution where you can engage and involve the organization out of the box. And I think that's the direction you should focus on.
Great. Thank you, Søren. Thanks for the question, Kevin. Anameta, I'll ask you this one. Søren, a break. I suppose Kevin is wondering approximately how long does it take to run a payroll process of up to 10,000 people?
Of up to 10,000 people? Well, I think the most I have been a part of running is up to 5,000 people, and that takes about 10 minutes.
Wow.
Yes.
So that gives you an idea, Kevin, of actually how quick this is. Good question as well from Kate. Hi, Kate. Thanks for joining. I'll ask Søren this one. How does ECP integrate into your SAP on-prem S4 solution to drive functional processes?
That's a good question and might need a bit more clarity, but I'll try. I mean, for the idea is, in fact, and I think that was really key points also from Alex, that doing EC payroll, you remove the HR away from your S4 environment. You still need, for a number of S4 finance processes, production, you need a mini master. Also, if you're using CAT's cross-application timesheet, that is a finance or cross-application process. So, but the idea going full cloud is that you finally have an ERP solution, not, you can say, containing the need or demanding a need for these legal change packages, which is coming with a higher frequency than what you see in a normal S4 setup. So the idea is definitely to get them, you can say, disconnected, but connected in a way where you have standard integrations in relation to your cost centers coming from controlling into your Employee Central. When you have done your posting, you put your posting file back into your S4 environment. So I think that's the general idea, to have really a more clean setup where you have isolated your HR, your time and payroll processes in a full cloud scenario,
Right.
but still supporting the S4.
Thanks, Kate. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate in reaching out. But thanks for the feedback. I am mindful of the time. We have gone over, but thank you to those who are still on the call. There's actually quite a few. I am mindful as well, I suppose, just of an upcoming event that I think will resonate with most of the people that attended today. If you're in Denmark or Copenhagen, we are holding an on-site version of this and a lot more client payroll and pastries. That's happening on the 18th of June. Søren will be there, as will Anna Mette, as in more of her subject matter experts. It's a physical event, but as I said, if you're in the area, we would love to see you. It's a good opportunity, I suppose, to get more insights into SAP ECP. We'll also cover off, which is very relevant to the Danish market, Gavdi's reimbursement and refusion application. We'll do some product demos. And we'll also talk, I suppose, about what's relevant is in the sense of, where is ECP going? There is a link, I think, in the chat. If you are interested in attending that, we would love to see you. We promise that we'll also have some really good coffee and some great pastries. And on that note, again, thank you to everyone who attended today. It was unfortunate that we did have the breakage down of the internet, but these things do happen. If you would like to know a little bit more about ECP, and I suppose migrating from S/4HANA or EC to ECP, please don't hesitate to reach out to anyone. We will follow up with everyone who attended in the sense that if you have any further questions, but look forward to seeing everyone on the next session and hopefully get to meet you all in person at the upcoming event in Copenhagen. I might hand it over to you, Søren, maybe just for those final few words.
Yeah, no, definitely thank you for that, John. We hope that we will see as many as possible in Copenhagen. We might even try to do it online as well. Whether that works, I don't know. And let's not be too optimistic, but would be great to see you all in Copenhagen.
Thank you, Søren. And